voice prompt.
Yes. So welcome everyone. My name is Roxanne Mackay. Elaine asked me to log into the meeting on her behalf as she is on holidays today. So Chelsea is a health and fitness coach who specializes in all three pillars of health, including fitness, nutrition, and mindset coaching. So she's got a short and sweet presentation for us. She says it won't take the full hour, but enjoy. And I hand it over to Chelsea.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. So I will go ahead and share my screen with y'all. So as you can tell by the title, today we're going to be talking about the little shift that happens from August to September. We're going to talk about it, unpack it a bit, and then we're going to go over some ways to ground our health and fitness habits and some mindset habits as well to approach this shift a little smoother than maybe last year. So without further ado, I will introduce myself further. So for those who do not know me, my name is Chelsea, and I'm the owner of Divine Health and Fitness. So you can check us out, divinehealthandfitness.com. I am a personal trainer, as Roxanne mentioned, a nutritionist, and a life coach. So I focus on all three pillars of health and fitness with my clientele. So not only do we do fitness training and nutrition with clients for their health and fitness goals, but along my career, I've also taken additional courses in CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, and so on and so forth. So I integrate spirituality and the psyche as well into programs. And that really came about in my experience with one specific client who had a very big weight loss goal, and we ended up, succeeding in hitting that goal with her. And I still saw some unhappiness kind of at the end of that accomplishment, which made me, seek further guidance into this whole health and fitness thing. I was like, there's got to be something I'm missing here. And that's really where the mindset piece comes from. So, loving ourselves fully internally is just as important as, working on the external portion of us. And I just personally believe that to be the philosophy and the approach that I really take to this whole thing. I take a very much a sustainable approach, right? So I like to focus on where the origin lies with clients, where their habits have stemmed from, and why that is that they may not be, getting to their ultimate goal. And my whole fitness background, a little bit about me, I started in martial arts actually, and I still train in it. It's like the air I breathe, but it really kind of got me, I really enjoyed the challenge of it, and it got me to experience fitness. And I've actually traveled to Thailand for it. So when I'm not, being very calm and centered, you can find me on the other side of that, which is, punching a punching bag. And I struggled myself with some health concerns at a very young age. So that kind of pushed me, fortunately and also unfortunately in the direction of nutrition. So I obtained my holistic nutrition designation about 5 years ago. So I've been in the industry for well over about 8 years now. So I've seen kind of what works and what doesn't. And it's a great time. It's September 1st. So I really like to kind of talk about this stuff around this time, because one thing that we tend to see is a lot of shifts happening around like January, right? January 1st, everyone's like new year, new goals. But I also think September 1st, there really isn't like a right time to start. I think you should start whenever, you're feeling that motivation. But September 1st can also be a great opportunity for us, right? Because we can get a head start. And come January, it's like an easier hill to kind of climb up of. You want to visualize it that way. If you kind of start the pace up the hill, come the peak, it's a little bit less of a drag to get back down. So that's how we're going to approach this today. And if you are interested in winning a free virtual training session with me, I will post in the chat here a link. And you can pull up the link now. I recommend you do that. Just keep it in a sidebar. And then if any of this resonates with you and you're feeling like you need that extra boost, I would definitely go and fill out the form with your contact info, and you'll be contacted if you are so lucky to be chosen. All right, so let's get started. Our first topic here, which is, that shift again. So September 1st, coming off of a summer, June, July, August. So let's talk about what shifts we're actually noticing. The first one that we can probably all agree on, that's the most common, and personally the most common one I see, is back to school. So whether you're going back to school, whether you have, the kiddos going back to school, this tends to be the time of year where this happens. So we tend to see some schedule changes and a little bit of a adaptation in our routine, right? Additional to that, seasonal and weather changes. So what might surprise you, and what tends to surprise people when I mention this, is that summer runs from June 1st to August 31st. So welcome to autumn, if you weren't aware. It actually runs from September 1st to November 30th. So we are officially in that shift in this moment. Some energy shifts that we also see. So if you follow astrology at all, our third and final Mercury retrograde actually happens in the last couple of days of September. So September 27th to October 18th, and that's happening in the sign of Libra. So I personally have been following astrology for many, many years, and I use it as a tool to be more self-aware about what energies I'm experiencing around me. And so if you're not familiar with what a retrograde is, essentially it's when a certain planet in our solar system looks as though it's going backwards. And each planet has a category that it kind of rules. So Mercury, for example, rules communication. So because that's the planet that we're going to see in retrograde, we can tend to see some complications in terms of our throat chakra around this time. So we might feel as though we either want to close up a bit and say less, or we might, have less of a filter and want to say more. So just, being more self-aware around, how we're vocalizing and approaching our emotions verbally can be a great means of understanding around this time as well. And then routine, ultimately, right? So I would love to hear from you guys. So let's all go in the chat collectively. Where do you feel, as the month approaches, is going to be your biggest change? Where do you see the biggest shift for you this upcoming month? Where's that area going to be? So it could be, some of the things I just mentioned. And let's try to be a little specific too. So if you feel like it's going to be your routine, what about that routine for you are you anticipating? Okay, we have seasonal. Yeah, reduction in daylight, right? Those hours mean less time for outdoor activities that I enjoy. Christine says kids back to school, getting them up in the mornings, teenagers. My mom used to have this trick where she would come in with a glass of water and she would go, water, water, water. And I would jump out of bed. I couldn't get out fast enough because I knew she would go ahead and pour that water on me. Worked every time. So we're definitely seeing, a lot of seasonal, a lot of back to school. Work schedules, right? I love how Casey said like the balancing. So the back to school with the increased family needs. Yeah, school pickups, drop-offs, making lunches, homework. I love how specific you were there, Casey. That's awesome. Yeah, and then additionally making times for ourselves too, right? When we write it down, we can tend to see the visual a little bit better. So I encourage everyone to kind of unpack what that means for them. Ooh, Christine, good one. Less access to fresh fruit and vegetables. A lot of us don't tend to think about that, right? Like there's less farmers markets, there's less bioavailability. which inherently means less nutrients for us to consume. So if you see me drinking this little green drink here, everyone tends to ask me what it is. It's just a little bit of chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is basically a phytonutrient, and it's where we get that green pigment from our fruits and vegetables. So it's definitely something that I tend to just liquidize in my water on this time, because we have less access to those nutrients. So I just make sure my body gets it in. Everyone's like, are you drinking Gatorade? I'm like, far from Gatorade. Awesome. I love all of those answers, guys. So with that in mind, now that you've kind of targeted what that's going to be for you, I encourage you to affiliate it with whatever resonates with you with the next slide here, which is, how do we take what's about to happen for us and flow through that shift a little bit more mindfully? So I encourage you again to just, take what resonates with you with anything that I talk about here. And then that could be your guide to just applying that to whatever you just mentioned in the chat. So firstly, I want to mention the acceptance piece and how important that is. So if you're one of the people that maybe, had an emotional response to me mentioning that today is the first day of autumn, and maybe that was a surprise to you, that this piece might be important for you, right? So basically, we are trying to sit with the understanding that, okay, let's have gratitude toward, the last couple of months. Let's, exude some love and just focus on what we can take from summer, but then also coming into accepting the present moment, because there is no denying it, right? Summer is definitely reaching a close. And although many of us probably, take the time to be mindful of the summer sensations that we feel, such as, the warm sun on our skin, right? How many of us, give the colder weather such attention as well, right? As humans, we tend to notice and we tend to appreciate, pay more attention to things that we like in life, of course, and we begrudge, those that we believe that we hate. And basically in between the shift, right, of like the colder weather and our perspective on it, there's a space. And in that space is our ability to choose our perspective. So I'll repeat that. With this changing in weather from hot to cold and our perspective on it, there's a space, and that's our ability to choose what is our perspective on it. So I want to take a moment here too. If you feel comfortable enough, go ahead and put it in the chat. What is this shift to you? Like, what does that mean to you? How do you approach it? What's the mindset towards the colder weather, towards the change in schedule, right? Let's kind of unpack that in our minds. Like, how are we feeling towards it as of right now? And then knowing this, we can see if there's any areas of opportunity that we may want to change a little bit. And additionally, right, in this perspective shift, of unpacking what this shift means to us, we can basically observe how most of the time as humans towards like winter or whatnot, we tend to kind of surrender to this thinking of, oh, I hate the cold. We've just kind of surrendered to it. We don't tend to really unpack what that space is for us. So instead of doing that and just surrendering to that thought, why not try using it to become more present in your body? So, noticing the chill on your face, or the change in your breath, right? You can attempt to change the perspective of how that feels or not, right? You don't have to enjoy it, but being mindful of it may bring new feelings and sensations that otherwise, you may not have noticed. And ultimately, like, this is a form of practicing self-awareness, right? And we're training that muscle in the brain. And lastly, actually too, like, a common theme that I see is like people really attaching some emotion to like the warmth of summer. And so I encourage you to think of this in the sense that, you know, warmth can still be present in our lives around this time, but just in different forms, right? So let's think of different forms that warmth can be present. I know for one, like it can be material. So it can be like the softness of our scarf. We can pay more attention to that versus maybe the negatives of how we feel with the actual coldness. It can be a hot cup of tea when you come home, right? Maybe the snugness of your coat, or, you know, a throw blanket on your couch, things like that. So warmth can very much still be present. Elaine says, I embrace the colder or the cooler temperatures, but really dread the short days. Okay, so keep that in mind. Debbie says, not looking forward to cold and winter. I try to enjoy being outdoors in the winter, but more challenging for sure. Absolutely. We're definitely going to get into that and get into some action statements we can apply to that shift. Kelsey says, prefer slightly cooler weather, but find that outside of the summer, it's harder to be passive. Yeah, totally. You know, the fun activities. Absolutely. I totally feel you on that. You're definitely not alone. Christine, our work from home reduces the stress of commutes and allow me to just, oh, I like that perspective shift, that reframing. I love it. Yeah, love it. All right. Okay, so the next bullet point here, guys, we have our human connection and similarities to seasonal change. So what do I mean by that? I mean, how can we bond essentially, you know, spiritually, on a soul level, on an energetic level? How can we, you know, bond with the change that's happening? And so we can feel more connected to it. And you know, just as the seasons change, guys, is how we change. And we all go through, you know, our own personal seasons, quote unquote, right? We also ourselves go through times of light and sunshine, and then times of dark and cold, you know, emotionally, physically, all that stuff. And in knowing that, we can kind of hopefully feel some groundedness in the idea that we're not so separate from nature in this way, and we're not, you know, we're very much linked to its, you know, transitory cycles. And if we can accept, you know, one would argue that if we can accept the changing in weather, we might take one step closer to also accepting our own changeability, and that can be beautiful, right? So meditation is our next point here. So does anyone here currently practice meditation? Any form of it? It can look different for each and every one of us, but specifically, you know, guided meditations. I'm curious if anyone currently practices that. If so, I have a link here for a great one that is linked to yours. I'm just going to have to minimize this for a second to grab the link. I'll post that in the chat. Ooh, Insight Timer. Yeah, that's a great modality for that, for sure. I like YouTube, obviously, one, because it's free and I don't get much, you know, pushback from my clients from free things. So this one specifically here is one of my favorites around this time. Oopsies, we gotta go back a bit. However, if you feel like you're someone who doesn't fully enjoy the whole sitting down aspect of meditation, like, keep in mind, it doesn't always have to be like this type clearing of the brain. Sometimes sitting down and listening to your thoughts and letting them come and go is just as efficient, right? We don't need to view it as like shutting our brain off, but keep in mind that we get over like 100,000 thoughts coming in and out of our mind each day. And so just even sitting down for 5 minutes and just becoming aware of them can be so helpful. And especially if we're trying to practice like positive self-talk, just being able to observe, how do I speak to myself? What does come up for me, versus kind of disconnecting throughout the day. Meditation in this form has actually become, you know, very crucial for some of my clients. And sometimes it does create like a sacrifice. I know like the common kickback I get from clients is, Chelsea, I don't have time. Like there's so much going on. It's so chaotic in my household. And if that resonates with you, something that you can do, and I actually, have my clients do is journaling. So for the next like 3 days, just write down from the start of your day to the end, kind of what it looked like. You can even do it just at the end of your day and just ask yourself, okay, this is what my day looked like. Can I find 5 minutes to take out and just do complete silence? And that may mean for you, a little bit of sacrifice in the morning, maybe when, before the day has become chaotic, you take that 5 minutes to just sit in peace and recenter yourself. But again, like I encourage you to explore where that time can be pulled for you. Again, some of my clients, it's like habitual now. They can't go about their day without it because they disconnect otherwise. So other forms of meditation, guys, like I know for me in the summer, it was like going on walks and just being by like large bodies of water. Like it can look different for all of us. And so again, I encourage you to explore now that the, seasons are changing, how can you integrate that into your day-to-day life? How can you give yourself even just 5 to 10 minutes of that, silent time? Journaling is another modality that I am a big fan of. And I recommend getting a journal for your mindfulness and just dedicating that journal to just that. So, don't go writing your grocery list inside of it. Keep it specifically just for you so that you can energetically connect to it when you do sit down to it. It's a safe space and you know that that's what it's for. And I have some journal prompts here for you guys if you want to screenshot it or write it down now and then, answer them later. And they're specifically linked to this topic. So the first one is, what changes can I expect in the upcoming month? We kind of went over that earlier as well, so you can unpack that further if you'd like to. What actions can I perform to help keep me grounded? If you could work towards one goal this September, what would it be? And lastly, list 3 ways your routine specifically will change this season. So I know A and D seem pretty similar, but changes could be anything, whereas D is a little bit more specific, right? What about your routine is actually going to change? So I would like to do C as a collective. Let's answer C together. So if you could work towards one goal this month, what would it be? And the goal here is to be as specific as possible. Again, the more specific you can be, the better. So if you, for example, want to say, I want to be more grounded this month, what are you going to do towards that to ensure that you are more grounded? Or what ways have worked in the past for you? Or if you are unsure, what are we going to do about that? So everyone takes a minute here. I'll go through that. I know for me, a goal of mine is to be more present and appreciate the beauty in change, right? And, the leaves are going to start changing. I want to be able to be with the seasons. I don't want to do the alternative, which is suppression. Because it's very common. It's very easy for us to just be like, it's not, no, it's still summer. And sometimes we feel this, like, I see this so commonly. We feel this like urge to just harness it and like do everything, right? Like I don't know about you, but I have so many friends like blowing up my phone being like, let's try this, let's do this, do you want to hang out? And it's like, where were you 2 months ago, right? Everyone kind of wants to savor the last few moments of the warm weather. But personally for me, I want to be able to be present and enjoy it, because this moment, it will only be here for a moment in time. If you don't feel comfortable writing it in the chat as well, feel free to write it separately on a piece of paper and answer that for you later. Oh, right, so as we're kind of rolling that out, we will move on to the health and fitness piece. My next slide here, but feel free to continue to write your answers in the chat. We can go through it together later on. All right, so the role of health and fitness, where does this kind of play into the changing in months? I know it's gonna, again, look different for everybody. Maybe you were consistent over the summer. Maybe you took the summer to, do the opposite and just be with friends and family, either or is totally okay. But what we do tend to see, and we mentioned this kind of together, I saw some people mention this in the chat, right? Less outdoor activities. Not none, but definitely a lot less, right? So we're at home more often. So I would argue that this is more important for our bodies. Like movement's more important around this time more than ever, just because we are a little bit more sedentary. And what we tend to see, and this is a common phrase that I tend to use amongst my own practice and my own teachings, is the use it or lose it. So the muscles that you don't use, you lose in terms of its strength, in terms of its capabilities, in terms of its effect in keeping your, joints healthy and safe. And muscles play that role, right? They protect our joints, and they're helpful in our joint health. So whatever, like if we're sitting down all day at a desk, or if we're, just getting outside less and the temperature is a little bit colder, it's, preventing blood circulation. So we want to be encouraging that blood circulation. We want to be encouraging a safe space for the body to fight off infections, fight off disease, right? It's definitely going to be a cold and flu season that we're approaching here. And just keeping the body in a state of strength, right? And again, I mentioned this earlier, right? That window here of like, January 1st, everyone tends to want to start then, but why not start now, right? Get ahead of it, right? Again, that big hill analogy that I mentioned earlier, like if you pick up your speed before you approach the hill, getting up the hill is less of a drag. It's definitely less difficult. So, as the late fall and winter kind of provide plenty of like tempting reasons to stay inside, the shorter, darker days. But the holiday trees everywhere. It's a means to be, getting more momentum before that time period, right? So we have an opportunity here to get ahead of it. Another thing is, if you are like working out from home, this can actually be a benefit because we're not seeing so much of a temperature drop. One thing that I think we don't tend to realize is like even leaving our house, right? Our bodies are going through a lot of temperature changes, and the body is always striving for homeostasis, which is balance. So it's always going to strive to regulate your body temperature and bring it to that balanced state. So if we're at our house and we're in a certain temperature, and then we leave the house, different temperature in the car, different temperature outside, different temperature, and then you're inside of a gym, hypothetically, if you're going to one, it's a lot for the body to have to go through. So warming up ahead of time is crucial, just for lack of injury, and also having a cool down at the end as well. But if you're at home, you're keeping more of a temperature regulation. So that's actually kind of a benefit if you are going to work out from home. You're at less risk of injury, right? Because as the temperature drops, your muscles get tighter. So regardless of doing your workouts inside or outside, it's always good to warm up before you start. Hydration is a big one here too. We tend to see the importance of it, of course, in the summer, as the sun tends to dehydrate us in the warmer climates, but cold weather also tends to pull moisture out of the air. So it makes your body dehydrate faster than you might think. So it's still just as important, guys. Does anyone here know how to calculate how much water they should be consuming for their own bodies? So depending on how much we weigh is the surface area of which we need to hydrate, right? We have more mass on our bodies, our body needs more hydration, and it's the first crucial macronutrient. It's 75% of our body's mass. So being able to calculate this is so important to know what our baseline is. So if you're not familiar with it, I'll write it in the chat here. The calculation is 30 milliliters times each kilogram of body weight. Will give you your calculation. So I'm going to do mine with you now. If you're not sure how much you weigh in kilograms, you can just convert that pretty easily on Google. So you'll just take your weight in pounds, convert to kilograms. Once you have that number, times it by 30. So I am 69 kilograms. If I times that by 30, I get 2,070. So I would put that 2 as like a decimal point. And so I actually need roughly around 2 liters per day for my own body weight. So I want everyone else, if you're comfortable to do that calculation, write it in the chat. And then I want to know, do you get that currently? Yes or no? And if you do, how? I also love to hear different themes of what that looks like for you. I know some clients are very good at, bringing water bottles with them around their day. And if you're sitting at home, working from home, it's a little bit easier to have it at your desk. And this calculation could be a little surprising to you. Oh, really? So Jennifer says her water intake has dropped somehow with work from home. Okay, we'll go over some ways that we can grab hold of those habits in the next slide too. So if you're feeling like there's like a lack of accountability there for you, we'll go over some ways to integrate that. All right, so Christine, if you want to go on Google, just put in your weight in pounds and you can convert it. So just go pounds to kilogram calculation or conversion, and then take that kilogram number and times it by 30. And so this number that you get, so again, mine was 2 liters. That is like my baseline, guys. That is how much my body needs to operate all of my bodily functions effectively. So, getting and transporting nutrients, blood, oxygen, hormone regulation, my organs, right? My pancreas, my liver, my kidneys, my gallbladder, just getting everything to work effectively and getting toxins to excrete properly. I need 2 liters. So keep in mind that if you're sweating, you're losing some water through that sweat. If you're caffeinating each day, the rule of thumb is 1 cup of water per caffeinated beverage. So there are other things that will dehydrate us as well that we want to make sure that we are considering and replacing if we can. A common kickback I get from this too, or pushback from clients, is, Chelsea, I'm gonna have to pee. I keep having to pee. And I always tell them, I'm like, what can I think of the word? That is a muscle. So you're training that muscle as well. So the more, you're drinking water, your body will get used to having to hold that in your urinary tract, and it will get stronger at holding it in. But we want to be flushing the body constantly anyhow. So, and most of us are still working from home. So the bathroom is a little closer than it used to be, right? Yes, Elaine. So you're going to be 2.1 liters. Absolutely. Yep. So you're going to put a little decimal point from that 2 to that 1. So you can just round it to 2.1. Absolutely. And then, let's think of ways that we can start to get this. We can also get water through tea. We can get water through foods, right? So a lot of cruciferous veg are very high in water content too. So adding that back into our diets. There's a debate in our house whether caffeinated beverages count as water intake. What's your take on this? If your water is mixed with a caffeinated beverage, so like if you're doing coffee, I do not count water. It kind of, when it's digested, it counteracts its effect because your body doesn't hydrate with that water because of the molecules of the caffeine. So it has to be separate. If you're doing a herbal tea that's non-caffeinated, that won't affect the way that your body absorbs water. So you can definitely just kind of separate the two. You're absolutely welcome. If you need me to fight for you, you know where to find me. Let them know that Chelsea said so. Awesome, guys. So there's my little water spiel. And then the next one is vitamin D, right? Very common vitamin that we tend to hear about around this time. Does anyone know why? Why do we need a little bit more vitamin D around these colder months than we do typically in the summer? Yes, Kenya says sunlight, absolutely. So we tend to get a lot of our vitamin D from the sun, which is why if you ever notice someone who goes on vacation during the winter, comes back, you know, they don't get sick as often and they're a little happier, not just because of the fact that, you know, they were on vacation, but their skin cells were absorbing that vitamin D. And vitamin D is actually a fat soluble vitamin. So we store it in our lymph and we can access it whenever our body needs it. So if you are, you know, going on vacation for 2 weeks, absorbing all that sunlight, it's going to stay in your body for, you know, another couple of weeks afterwards. So those weeks leading up, you're kind of at like a heightened storage peak for that vitamin D. So do we know that vitamin D breaks down into 2 forms, guys? So it breaks down into D2 and D3. So this is a common studied vitamin and kind of how our bodies absorb it, right? So vitamin D, essentially, it helps us absorb calcium from our diet. It helps bring calcium to the bones and where it needs to go, which is why it's so important that we're getting it. But it also helps regulate our mood as well. We're seeing more meta-analysis and more scientific research on how vitamin D affects our mood. So making sure that we're getting enough D3 is very crucial as well. So I tend to personally take D3 in like a liquid form, and I add it to my water every single day and making sure that I'm getting that into my diet. And D3 versus D2, we're seeing more now in scientific research that it has a bigger effect or a better effect anyways in the way that we absorb calcium versus D2. So feel free to do your own research and look it up, but definitely making sure that you're getting some type of supplement, just because it's very difficult to get it through our food sources, because there's not a ton of sources out there that are very high in the vitamin D vitamin. So what else? It's both a nutrient, but it's also a hormone that our bodies make. But again, it's fat soluble. So what does that mean? Fat soluble means, again, you store it in lymph. Water soluble means that you're going to excrete it through your urine. So a common water soluble vitamin is our B complex. So if you've ever taken a B complex and seen a change in color through your urine, that means that you're excreting whatever you're not using, your body's getting rid of it. Now, there's a danger behind this too, because if we take too much vitamin D, our body's not going to excrete it right away. So we do risk some complications with the organs, specifically the kidneys. So making sure if you're not currently sure how much vitamin D you should be getting, that's where a nutritionist like myself can come in. And I make sure that all my clients know through a nutrition evaluation how much vitamin D they specifically need to be getting. So this is me in no ways telling you how much to go and have. I don't want to be responsible for that. But if you are curious, there is a RDA, which is it's an abbreviation for recommended daily allowance. And in Canada, we have Health Canada, we have the FDA that tends to create these RDAs based upon a typical 2,000 caloric diet for an average individual. And so the numbers that come up for that through the Health Canada is 19 years or older, we're looking at 600 international units daily. And for men and women and for adults, it's 800 IUs daily. So that is what the RDA is. But again, depending on how you absorb vitamin D, depending on your past diet, current diet, depending on your circumstances, so many different variables can play a role and a factor into how much we should be getting. And so again, we want to make sure that we're not overdoing it, because we do have some risk of complications there. So like I mentioned earlier, again, like few foods naturally contain it. So, I mean, some foods you might see are fortified with it, But for most people, the best way to get it is through a supplement. And again, vitamin D3. So vitamin D2 and vitamin D3 are both naturally occurring forms that are produced in the presence of the sun. But vitamin D production in the skin is the primary natural source of it. That's again where we get it most often. But it's very common that most of us are insufficient in our levels. So either we live in places where sunlight is limited, or again, in these winter months, we're going to see less of it. People with darker skin tend to have lower blood levels of vitamin D due to their pigment and the melanin, and that acts like a shade. So it kind of reduces the production of vitamin D as well. So that's something to look into as well for your level of intake. All right. Okay. So, and then lastly for health, where I want to put some emphasis here, guys, is finding your why. And the reason why I let this kind of to the end of these bullet points here is because we can kind of talk all day about, what we need and what's important, but I really want everyone to kind of take a moment to ask themselves, what are my health and fitness goals? Like, what are my goals specifically towards fitness for this month, for the months ahead? And then I want you to unpack the why. So in any one-on-one personal training coaching that I do with my clients, this is actually one of the first things we do in their initial assessment is I unpack and I break down and I dive deep into why they're here, why they're seeking training or any form of accountability. And why we do this is because we need to create a sense of motivation. And we need to attach emotions to things. And if we don't attach emotions to things, we don't tend to be as accountable and our motivation can drop. And as a trainer and as a coach myself, that's part of my job, is to remind you why you're here or to remind you, what your goals are and why we're doing this. So unpacking your why can look different for all of us. But the first step basically is asking yourself, like, what is your real motivation for wanting to get healthy? So think big. And then, maybe you want to lose weight, but what's motivating that? What's driving that for you? Is there anything that has come up in the last couple weeks or months that has triggered that thought? And, maybe it's to have more energy and it's to get stronger. So again, a very crucial step that I do in my practice is we just dig deeper. Like, what's the bigger picture? Maybe you want to have more energy so that you can play with your kids. And like, why is that important to you? Why is playing with your kids important, like, for you? And keep going. So again, in that journal that we talked about earlier, you can unpack this with yourself and just kind of do a brainstorming chart, like get as deep and as rooted as you possibly can. And then reminding yourself of that on a daily practice. Okay, arguably the most important portion of this is grounding these habits, right? So what action items can we apply to create long-term results, to create sustainability, to create a lifestyle change ultimately, right? So one of the worst things that I think you can do in terms of doing all of this self-work is losing that momentum, right? We can sit and do all the work, but if we don't apply it long-term, we're ultimately going to be doing a yo-yo, and we can create more space for these negative habits to just come back into play. So first and foremost, it's that accountability. I say this all the time. Yes, I'm a coach. Yes, I offer services in nutrition and in fitness and in, the psyche, but I'm really offering services of accountability first and foremost. Like, that's the top tier thing that I'm doing. And I think we all can agree that we can, in any stages of our life, benefit from accountability. I, even as a coach, could benefit from it myself. We all can. So that can look like many different forms. For you, it might be hiring someone like myself to, remind you again of why you're here, to have that time session of, like, you meet with Chelsea Monday at 1 p.m. and that's, a logged part of your day in your calendar. and something that you don't have to think too much about. You can do it and go about your life and know that it's always something that's scheduled for you. Or if you aren't hiring a coach, to even just have it logged somewhere in your day. Like, again, that journaling of like writing down our entire day and then asking yourself, where can I fit this in? And then doing something that's tangible to hold yourself accountable to it. So it might be putting it into your calendar. It might be blocking off time. It can look very different, right? There's a lot of free mobile apps out there, guys. So especially even with the water stuff, I think someone mentioned in the chat, I think it was Christine, who was mentioning like, she's drinking less now at her desk. Just downloading a free water app can be helpful, and it will actually send you like notifications to say like, hey, have you drinking your water today? How much water have you had? Where are you at with your water? And most of us are always either on our computers or our phones. So it's a great way to kind of check in with yourself throughout the day and have a little app buddy, if you will. There's apps for even just like working out. Like one of my clients on his Apple Watch, it'll beep at him and say like, get up and move. And it'll do it like a couple times throughout the day, which I encourage, because the way that I view posture, guys, is that, I don't actually think that we should be sitting upright like this at a desk all day, every day. That's a little bit unrealistic, but I do encourage what I call movement snacks. So getting up and putting your joints through its full range of motion, doing some hip controlled articular rotations to get the hips moving and going through its full range of motion. Just so, again, we don't lose what we've gained, or we don't lose the strength in those areas that, do inherently support us. Another habit grounding technique that you can use is on my Instagram, I have a 30-day meditation challenge. So if you scroll down, or if you go on the highlight reel to where the meditation reel is, we do this meditation challenge where basically it's like exposure therapy. So you're progressively and slowly opening up your mind to the idea of meditating. And because it's 30 days, it will create that habit. And get friends involved, right? So at the end of this here, guys, I will be explaining to you one of the services I offer. It's semi-private training. So if you are interested in getting a group of you guys at CHEO together and doing some virtual workouts with me, the semi-private environment is great because it's still targeted, still personal, right? You're not in a group of like 10 or 20 people. It's a maximum of 5. And so if you even have just 3, of you together and you see me at a designated time per week, it can be a little bit more motivating to have friends there with you, to be going on a, health and fitness journey with others. And so you don't kind of feel alone. So that's also something that I encourage. And to add it into your schedule is something I mentioned. And then again, progression. So throughout my years, I always have a common question that people approach me with. And it's like, what's one thing that you would tell me to do to see results? Like if you could pick one thing that will get me results. And I always say progression. Okay. As a trainer, one thing that I always am doing in, programming is I'm progressing you. We're starting with where you're at, but we're getting stronger. So we're not doing the same thing over and over again. We are, putting the body through new movements. We're progressing, and there's always something new to do, something new to learn. And the body ultimately has to adapt to that. And that's how results happen. If the body is stagnant, nothing's going to change, right? So progression is major. All right, so we have a couple of minutes left here, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the chat. I will put here where you guys can find me. So Instagram, I am Divine Health and Fit. Facebook, Divine Health and Fitness. And if you're interested in booking a completely free consultation with me, you can do so on our website at divinehealthandfitness.com. It's the first little button that you'll see. And in that consultation, we'll run through what your fitness goals are, and I'll steer you in the right direction in terms of our services and what we can offer and help you with. And then again, we're talking about that virtual semi-private group training. So because, we are with a bunch of you guys today, if you do want to get a group together, currently we're offering 10% off the first month with groups of 3 or more. So if you get 3 or more of you together, feel free to message me and you will be eligible for that 10% off discount. And it's 3 months minimum, and it's fun. We play music, we laugh, and we work out, we move our bodies. So there's a mix of like mobility and also strength training involved. But it's always, again, progressive and adaptive. So whatever weights you have, I make sure I give options for it. And we get on Zoom and we have a good time. So really quickly, I'll just put some of that into the chat for you if you're looking for other ways to find me, but I will stay on up until the 1 p.m. mark to answer any of your questions. And then again, guys, that raffle. So if you want to be entered to win a free session with me, so a free 1-hour session with me, there's a contact form here that you can fill out. So that type form link. If you fill out your contact info, you'll be entered to win, and you'll be contacted in the event that you're the chosen winner. And then I'll link my website here as well. And I'd also love to hear from you guys which part of the webinar that you feel most resonated with you today. You're welcome, guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Lots of positive energy. Hopefully you can take some knowledge here today and apply it to your day. Drink your water. No more excuses. That's right. Put a little mental trash bin there. You can have a home for all the excuses. Where there's a will, there's a way. Biggest thing you can do there is really dive into your why, right? Get to the emotional root of it and put it on a sticky note, put it on your mirror, remind yourself daily why it's important to you. Keep that motivation going. As soon as we lose it, it's very hard to get back. You're welcome, Debbie.